Hey everyone, how's it going? I want to follow up today on something I said in my sermon on Sunday. I wanted to talk more about it, and I realized it was kind of a diversion. It would have taken us off of our topic, and so I thought, this would be a good thing to kind of follow up. Let's call this an appendix for the update video. But we were looking at Isaiah chapter 48, verses 1 through 11, and God telling Israel that he saves them, that he'll redeem them, and he'll use the Babylonian exile to refine them, all for his name's sake. He says, for my own sake, I do it. It's not rooted in the worthiness of his people that he does this. He's very clear that they're rebels. They're not worthy of salvation, but he roots his saving work, his grace, and what's implied there is his covenant love and his faithfulness. He roots it all in his own character. And I talked about what God's glory means. He says, I won't give my glory to another. It's for the sake of preserving his glory. And what this means is God's glory is the shining forth and the display of his own infinite, eternal perfections that are intrinsic to him. And so every time God displays who he is, the greatness of who he is glorifying himself. So we could sort of break apart this idea of God glorifying himself in the context of salvation, saving an unworthy people, as God showing forth or magnifying the depth of his love and the quality of his love, the quality of his grace, his kindness towards sinners. And I was arguing for the supremacy of this kind of love, and I used the illustration of a marriage and say a husband asking a wife asking her husband, why do you love me? And he answers, on the one hand, he could answer in a way that focuses on her worthiness and loveliness as an object of love, saying you're beautiful, you're a great cook, etc. Which sounds nice, but I asked which is more securing, and I argued it's the latter. It's not one that focuses on the loveliness of the object, but on the depth of committed love from the subject, the lover. So saying, I chose to love you, I committed myself to you, it was my joy to do that, and I said I do to you those many years ago, and it's still my joy to be committed to you no matter what. And implied is no matter whether you're being a good wife or a bad one. That's actually a much more securing love. And I said, actually, both of these kinds of love, the kind that is committed, the kind that's principled and really comes from the depths of the lover, and the love that is a response to perceived loveliness. These are actually both biblical forms of love, and we don't ultimately have to be either or, both in terms of God's love for us and in terms of our relationships, the way we love. And so I wanted to delve into that a little bit here and talk about this feature of God's love. And you see, on the one hand, you see texts like 1 John 4, verse 10, saying that we love because God first loved us. There's this initiating force that God loved us first. This is his sovereign love. This is his eternal decree that he chose us in Christ before the foundations of the world. He set his love on us. That motivated the work of salvation, that motivated Christ to come and be our substitute, etc. So there is that principle coming from the depths of the lover himself. He decided to love us. That's really the foundation of his love for us. And praise be to God that that's the foundation. It doesn't take into account our worthiness. We had no worthiness. We love because first he loved us. But then you see, for instance, places like Jesus tells his disciples in the upper room in John 16:27, he says, the Father himself loves you, this is disciples, because you have loved me and have believed that I came from God. So it's not just the Father himself loves you because he chose to love you. That's true, and I'm arguing that's theologically prior and more foundational. But then he says, because, and he may surprise us, because you have loved me and have believed in me, believe that I came from God. So it's a response to something good in the disciples. Now, we understand this is good in the disciples that God himself is the worker of. He's the one that brought them to love the Son. He's the one that brought them to trust the Son. The Bible is very clear about this, that faith is a gift from God. And yet, what God does is that he, in his initiating divine love, he beautifies his people. He brings about some loveliness in them that wasn't in us, in ourselves. And that trust in the Son, that love for the Son, makes us more beautiful in his sight, makes us more lovely in his sight, and incurs deeper love. That is a kind of that kind of love that is a response to loveliness. He delights in the good things he's making in us. You think of Ephesians 5, where Christ is said to have given his life for his bride in order that he might wash her and cleanse her and present her to himself spotless. And it doesn't say there that his love for her is because of her spotlessness, but it seems implied that she becomes more lovely to him, more delightful to him. And there's this kind of feedback loop where love begets loveliness, and loveliness draws more love out of his heart. And it's a beautiful thought, this idea that Christ doesn't first love us because of who we are or what we do or anything like that. His love is committed to us and is, again, it's his own glory. It's from his own reserves of divine love. But yet it does still change us, and it makes us lovely to him, and it only draws more and more love out of him. I believe that the Song of Songs are, of course, poetry about the glory of love in a marriage context. And because we know that Christ and his church is the great marriage to which all other marriages are meant to point, the Song of Songs is showing us in some ways a typical picture of Christ and the church. And there you see the bridegroom delighting in the loveliness of his bride over and over in so many ways. And we as the church might wrestle with that, going, how could Jesus say that about us? But here's the beautiful thing, that love that is committed, a Christ-like kind of that sovereign eternal love that he sets on his people, that committed love has a way of seeing loveliness in the object. It's as though, and we're kind of running into parallels with marriage. If you're married, you know that there are ways that because you have devoted yourself to a spouse, and because you've committed yourself to a spouse, you see them in a certain way. If we're doing it right, of course, because of sin, we might not do this. It might be the opposite, and we see them in a hypercritical way, and nothing looks lovely. But the committed marital love is supposed to create a context in which it kind of puts a pair of glasses on our eyes, in which we see loveliness in our beloved. Maybe in things that no one else would find lovely. We see it that way. We see them that way. And so that's where the way that God has chosen to love us, initiating his love for us, his committed, devoted love, and then creating loveliness and seeing loveliness and delighting in loveliness, has its parallels in the marriage covenant, where we devote ourselves and saying through thick and thin, essentially no matter how good or bad of a spouse you are, however lovely or ugly you are, I am going to choose to love you. But then that creates a context in which we find and delight in loveliness. And that works for parent-child relationships and every other context of human love too. So I hope that's helpful, and just, again, magnifying the depth of God's love for us and how that works. Both his love that has nothing to do with us and his love that makes us lovely. Switching gears now to talking about what's going on schedule-wise. To remind you, we have Friday night, another children's ministry meeting that's for workers. So that's very important. We had the same meeting on the 16th last Friday. This is a repeat of the same content. So if you are working with children, interested in doing so, and you weren't there on the 16th, please be there this Friday on the 23rd. We also have on Saturday a barbecue led by the youth. So please be aware of that, and you'll find info on all these things in the newsletter email. And then finally on Sunday, we're continuing with our summer schedule. So no equipping hour. We have our corporate worship at 10 o'clock. And then we have a special evening gathering at 5 that's oriented around the Destins, our missionary partners in Haiti, who will be visiting. We'll hear a little bit more about what's going on, what the Lord's doing with them in Haiti, and just what's going on more broadly with the situation there. And then we'll just have an extended time of fellowship. So look forward to seeing you with those things this weekend. And until then, may you know God's blessings. Bye-bye.